1 month after my daughter's wedding, the photographer called and whispered, "Sir, you need to come alone. I found something in the photos. Something your daughter must never see." I was standing in my kitchen, still in my work shirt, holding my phone with fingers that suddenly didn't feel like mine. For a moment, I thought she had dialed the wrong number. But then she said my name, slowly, carefully, like she already knew what this would do to me. "Please," she breathed, "don't tell her you're coming." And that was the exact second I felt something inside me drop. Not fall, drop. Like a floorboard giving way under your feet. I didn't know it yet, but the truth waiting for me in that studio would split my life cleanly in half. Before the call. And everything after. Before I move on to what my daughter and son-in-law are doing, please write where you watched it. I'm very curious. I should have been happy that morning. My daughter had just married, the hardware stores were running smoothly, and I was finally catching up on paperwork at the kitchen table, coffee half warm, invoices open on my laptop, notifications buzzing about inventory deliveries. A normal Tuesday. Nothing remarkable. Then my phone lit up with an unknown number. I almost let it ring out. Almost. "Mr. Harlow, please," a whisper, thin and shaking, "come alone. Don't tell your daughter." My chest tightened before I even recognized the voice, Carolyn, the wedding photographer. I straightened in my chair, eyes drifting to the framed picture on the wall, Jackie in her dress, smiling so wide she looked airbrushed. "What's wrong?" I managed. "I can't say over the phone. But, something is very wrong." Her voice cracked. When she hung up, the silence in my kitchen felt like a verdict. Somewhere upstairs, the old AC groaned to life, shaking a vent. My laptop dimmed. A text from an employee popped up, "We're missing 3 pallets. Should I reorder?" I stared at the screen but couldn't process a single word. I kept hearing Carolyn's whisper, "Don't tell your daughter," and it dug under my ribs like a hook. At work, I tried to regroup. I stood behind the counter while customers browsed aisles of tools and paint samples, pretending to check my financial dashboard. The numbers blurred. Every few seconds I'd catch myself glancing at the clock. My hands felt clumsy on the scanner. Even small noises startled me, the clatter of dropped screws, the beeping of forklifts in the loading bay. My employees noticed something. Not directly, they would never say it, but in the way they paused before asking questions, in the way their eyes flicked over me like I might drop something important. Maybe I already had. Around midday, Jackie texted me a photo, her lunch with Samuel, 2 smiling faces at some glass-walled restaurant. She added a heart emoji. Below it, Samuel had typed, "We should all get dinner Friday, Dad." Just reading his message sent a thin pulse of nausea through me. I hated that reaction. I wasn't supposed to distrust my own son-in-law. Yet Carolyn's whisper wouldn't let go. By late afternoon, I felt like I was watching my own day from the outside, moving through motions, answering questions, nodding at things I didn't hear. Even closing the store felt mechanical. Lock, whist, check the door twice. Back home, I reheated leftovers I couldn't taste. The house hummed with familiar noises, dishwasher starting up, fridge clicking, but everything felt slightly off, like the walls were holding their breath. I kept seeing Jackie in that wedding dress. Samuel beside her. And the sharp, terrified way Carolyn had said something is very wrong. I didn't know what truth waited for me in her studio. I only knew something inside me, something I'd spent years holding steady, shifted just slightly. Not a plan. Not anger. Just the first small crack. The next morning, I tried to pretend nothing had shifted, but my house made it impossible. Every sound felt sharper, the fridge clicking on, the coffee maker dripping too loudly. Even Jackie's good morning text, a picture of her latte with a heart in the foam, sat on my screen like a performance meant for an audience she couldn't see. Samuel messaged right after her. We should get together soon, Dad. Just us men. The kind of message that looked friendly until you read it twice. I watched their social media posts while eating breakfast. Jackie's profile was full of curated happiness, gym selfies, brunch plates, Samuel's arm around her. His profile, by contrast, had gone silent. Nothing since the wedding. For a man who loved displaying his success, the silence was noise in itself. At work, I noticed something new, Jackie calling me less, replying slower. Not rude, just measured. Scripted. Before Samuel, she would send voice notes about her day, tiny irrelevant things. Now the gaps grew longer, her words flatter. When I finally reached her between meetings, she sounded distracted, said Samuel thought I worried too much. He just wants us to have boundaries, Dad, she added softly. Boundaries. A word people used when they meant distance. Later that afternoon, Wendy stopped by unannounced. She never asked permission, she walked in like the house still belonged to her childhood years. She glanced around, tapping her nails on the kitchen counter. You know, she said, Samuel told Jackie you've been overwhelming lately. Maybe just give them space? The sentence was polite. The tone wasn't. I stirred my tea and let her talk. She went on about how newlyweds need independence, repeating phrases that didn't sound like her at all. Echoes. Poorly memorized. After she left, I paid the utility bills. Normally a mindless task, but this time I noticed something odd. Jackie's name was missing from the payment history she once shared with me. A new bank account number appeared on file, Samuel's. I didn't touch anything, I just stared at the screen a moment too long, feeling my stomach pull tight. That evening, Samuel dropped by. Didn't call. Didn't knock. Just let himself in with Jackie's old spare key. Thought I'd check on you, he said, scanning my kitchen like it was a place he intended to redesign. His smile was too easy. You know, Jackie needs stability right now. Less stress. Less negativity. Negativity. Another word used to push someone off stage. He laughed at my silence, patted my shoulder like I was an employee he didn't need anymore, then walked out with the same key he shouldn't have had. When the door clicked shut, the house felt smaller than it ever had, like the walls were inching inward, slow but certain. I stood there with my hands still damp from the dishes, and for the first time, the crack inside me widened enough to let something else through, something sharp, something dangerous. This life, I realized, could not continue like this. Not much longer. The crack inside me didn't close overnight. It followed me the next morning as I sat at my desk, the wedding contract folder open in front of me. I'd pulled it out only because I couldn't stop replaying Carolyn's whisper, Samuel's silence on social media, Wendy repeating his phrases like cue cards. I hadn't planned to find anything. I just wanted to understand where things had begun to go wrong. But as I flipped through the papers, receipts, invoices, payment confirmations, I noticed dates that didn't line up. Signatures placed earlier than conversations I remembered. Services booked by the couple on days Jackie had been on business trips. Small things, but small things add up. I pushed my glasses higher and read everything again, this time slower. And there it was, a pattern I hadn't seen before. A structure. A timeline that didn't belong to Jackie. A wedding her husband had shaped around her, not with her. My throat tightened. I pulled out the flash drive Carolyn had given me. Not the photos themselves, I couldn't bring myself to look at them again, but the technical files. Metadata. Timestamps. Proof. Everything she'd said was right there in numbers and code, cold and objective. I opened the metadata window. 2 hours before the ceremony. The terrace location tag. Samuel's face captured without hesitation or confusion. A moment he had walked into willingly. I sat back, breath unsteady. There was no way to pretend this was an accident or misunderstanding. He had made choices. Calculated ones. And Jackie, she'd walked into that ceremony smiling, unaware she wasn't the only woman in a wedding ring that day. I felt something shift in my chest, heavier than the earlier crack. A drop, deep and final. I reached for the wedding contract again, now reading the fine print with the steadiness of someone bracing for impact. The more I compared the details, dates, payments, the order in which decisions seemed to have been made, the more one truth became impossible to ignore. There had been planning behind this. Not just infidelity. Preparation. Then I found what I hadn't expected, receipts and banking summaries that didn't match Jackie's income or patterns. Installments paid from accounts I didn't recognize. Expensive entries marked as covered. And with each line I read, the picture sharpened. Not a misunderstanding. A design. A quiet buzzing filled my ears, not anger, not yet, but something harder pushing its way through the fog. My hands gripped the table edge until my fingertips ached. This must stop. The phrase came uninvited, a clean slice through the confusion. I didn't say it out loud, but it felt spoken all the same. The first clear thought in weeks. I closed every file and gathered the papers into a neat stack. No shaking. No doubt. Just a new weight settling behind my ribs, anchoring itself. I told no one. Not Jackie. Not Wendy. Not even Carolyn. But inside, something solid had formed, a sharper edge, a quiet certainty. I would not remain silent forever. The morning after I organized the wedding papers and metadata, I woke with a steadiness I didn't recognize. Not peace, never that, but something colder, quieter. A settling. I made coffee without rushing, cleaned the counter, and sat at the table with a legal pad, writing down questions that had no emotion left in them. Only facts, dates, and the parts of the story that no longer matched. Later that afternoon, I met with an attorney. I didn't dramatize anything, I didn't need to. I laid out the inconsistencies in the wedding paperwork, the timeline captured in the metadata, the financial patterns that didn't belong to my daughter. I listened while the attorney explained Jackie's rights, the boundaries of marital access, what documentation mattered and what didn't. I wrote everything down carefully, as if clarity were a muscle I'd allowed to weaken over years of wanting peace. Back home, I gathered the documents I already had, nothing more, nothing new. The contracts, the receipts, the metadata files, the notes I had kept. I laid them out on my dining table, arranging them in the order I understood the events had unfolded. No emotion. Just order replacing chaos. In the evenings, I watched them all quietly. Jackie's voice had grown thinner around the edges, as if she were rehearsing before speaking. Samuel hovered closer than usual, answering questions meant for her, guiding her responses with light touches on her arm. Wendy drifted between them, echoing their lines one day, retreating the next. Her uncertainty showed in small things, half-finished sentences, messages she drafted and didn't send. I kept my questions mild, almost casual. So, Samuel, when did you two book the venue? Jackie mentioned you handled the finances, how early did you start the process? Little things. Harmless things. But each one forced him to commit to details I already knew didn't match the record. He noticed. I could see it in the way his answers tightened, his smile thinned, his hand clasped Jackie's a second longer than necessary. He began stepping in front of her more often, literally. Blocking conversations, redirecting topics, offering to explain things more clearly. He even suggested, subtly, that I might be overthinking again. That word, again, told me he had said far more about me to Jackie than I realized. Wendy watched those moments differently now. Not defending him. Not defending me either. Just watching. Quietly marking the shift in the room. And through all of it, I felt myself becoming something steadier. Less reactive. More deliberate. A man measuring distance before taking a step. I didn't explain my calm to anyone, didn't share my notes or intentions. I simply kept moving through the preparation the summary of my own life now demanded, assembling the documents, solidifying the timeline, readying myself for a conversation that would leave no space for denial. By the end of the week, I had everything in order, papers stacked, questions chosen, my voice finally returned to me, low and controlled. I didn't approach anyone. I simply stood at the edge of what came next, the quiet before a door opens, knowing the confrontation was no longer a possibility. It was an approach. And I was already walking toward it. I didn't sleep much the night before, but I wasn't restless. Just steady. Focused. By morning, the folder lay on my dining table, contracts, receipts, metadata printouts, timelines. Nothing new, just the truth arranged in an order no one could outrun. At noon, I sent the message to all three. Come by the house tonight. We need to talk. No explanation. No tone. Just an invitation none of them could refuse. They arrived together, Jackie and Samuel first, Wendy a minute later. They moved cautiously, like the house had shifted in some way they hadn't yet identified. I gestured toward the table. Sit. No one spoke as they took their seats. I sat across from them, the folder between us like a center of gravity. I opened it calmly. These are the wedding documents, I said. The ones I paid for. The ones you relied on me not reading closely. Samuel exhaled through his nose. Daniel, is this really NEC? I placed the first page in front of him. A receipt dated during one of Jackie's business trips. This signature isn't hers. His jaw flexed. Next, I laid out the metadata printouts. The times. The GPS tags. The photo numbers. I didn't need to show the images, the timestamps alone told the story. 2 hours before the ceremony, I said. You were on the terrace. Not with my daughter. Jackie blinked fast, her breath catching before she could hide it. Wendy looked down at her hands. Samuel tried to lean back, adopt that casual confidence he depended on, but it wouldn't hold. Daniel, this is being taken out of. No, I said, quietly. Nothing is out of context anymore. I set the final page in front of him, financial inconsistencies, deposits that did not match Jackie's income, patterns that were never hers. You built a marriage on deception, I said. And you counted on Jackie not seeing it. You counted on me never looking. He didn't reach for the papers. He knew better. I turned to Jackie, speaking gently. You deserved honesty. You didn't get it. Then to Wendy. And you deserved a brother-in-law who didn't use your sister. No shouting. No accusations beyond what the documents already proved. The silence that followed did more damage than anything loud could have accomplished. Samuel stood first. Not with defiance, just the realization that there was nothing left to argue with. Jackie didn't look at him. Wendy didn't either. When they finally left, the house fell quiet again. Not the heavy, suffocating quiet of before, something lighter. Air moving through open space. I washed the glasses they'd used, wiped the table, organized the papers into a single envelope. Afterward, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, scrolling through nothing in particular. The house hummed softly, almost like it had been waiting for this. For the first time in months, my chest didn't feel tight. Some truths hurt. Some truths free you. And some truths, once spoken, never let your life go back to what it was.